Hi, we're watching Prager U. The title of the video is fascism right or left? And they're going to claim that the left is the real fascists. That's my guess. And it's 5 minutes and we're going to watch it. Also, pee pee poo poo. I have to say it at least once. It's a ritual.
He's a fascist. For decades, this has been a favorite smear of the left aimed at those on the right. Every Republican president, for that matter, virtually every Republican, since the 1970s has been called a fascist. Now more.
Okay, you can already tell by the use of this person's language that this isn't really a good faith argument. By calling it a smear, right? We're not being critical of the use of the term. We're making emotional arguments at this point. So that could already like tell you kind of the intent. This person gets offended when they're called a fascist because they probably are a fascist considering they're Prager U. They support authoritarian ideas. You know, the conservatives, people that have been on Prager U. Ben Shapiro, for an example, which we'll talk about Ben Shapiro next. Ben Shapiro was complaining about Harry Styles in the dress, and I made another video about that. And if you don't want people who are men to wear dresses, you think that's really bad, that's kind of like a fascist take, that's kind of authoritarian. If you want to literally control society to that extent, to where you're controlling what people wear, pretty fascist. I don't know, we're gonna continue on the 17 seconds
This
in.
label is based on the idea.
It's a label, all right, we're categorizing it as the label. And conservatives typically get really offended when you call something a label. My grandma specifically gets really mad whenever I call her a bigot for saying something bigoted and says that like, oh, why do you gotta label me? Why do you have to use a label like that? Listen, dude, labels, right? I use labels for myself. I don't use it just for people I don't like. I also use it for people I like, because what it does is it condenses, you know, what I think the beliefs I have and that person has into one or a few words, right? So I would label myself as a leftist. What does a leftist mean? What information is within that label? Well, leftists are typically anti-capitalists. They're further than liberals, which is another label, and they are typically very progressive on social issues. That's what that label means. Right-wingers will complain and say that you're labeling them whenever you call them something they don't like, because they're very fragile, they're very thin-skinned, they're very weak, and it's some snowflake shit, in my opinion.
Fascism is a phenomenon of the political right. The left says it is, and some sell.
All right. Fascism is a label of the political right. Let's look up fascism. Wikipedia. Fascism, oh my god, stop. Fascism is a form of far right. That's it. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scream. That was for comedic effect. I hope someone laughed. Please don't bully me. Anyways, fascism is a form of far-right authoritarianism, ultranationalism, characterized by dictatorial power, forcible suppression of opposition, and strong regimination of society and of the economy. The video has already been debunked. You laughed? Okay, thank you. It wasn't for naught. Someone laughed, so it was worth it. You almost choked on your popcorn, literally eating popcorn while watching a msbusinesspeep video. Good job. I think it was worth it. It was worth it to destroy my vocal cords. We already won. Do I even need to keep watching the video? It's already been debunked. It's already been. All right, we're gonna keep watching it.
Self-styled white supremacists and neo-Nazis embrace the label.
Well, white supremacists and neo-Nazis would be described as fascists because they want to control the society they live in a very authoritarian way. They will literally kill black people, and neo-Nazis will kill Jewish people. That's pretty extreme. That's pretty fascist. It's not wrong to say that isn't the case.
Are they correct?
Yes.
To answer this question, we have to ask what fascism really means. What is its underlying ideology? Where does it even come from? These are not easy questions to answer.
It's pretty easy.
We know the name of the philosopher of capitalism, Adam Smith. We know the name of the philosopher of Marxism, Karl Marx. But who's the philosopher of fascism? Yes, exactly. You don't know.
Fascism is a baseless ideology. It's incoherent. That's why it doesn't have a particular, thinker. There's not like a specific fascist thinker, because the ideology is created from incoherent beliefs based on hatred and disgust of other groups. Obviously, intellectuals and philosophers and economists, all those people, none of them would really want to be fascists because it's not smart to be a fascist. It's really just an ideology based on hatred and bigotry. So, and a lot of people are hateful and bigots. It's not like there was one person who came up with this.
Don't feel bad. Almost no one knows. This is not because he doesn't exist, but because historians, most of whom are on the political left, had to erase him from history.
Why are most historians on the political left? Well, it turns out that people who are educated are more likely to be left-leaning. It seems like academia kind of supports leftist ideas. We could see this in cities. Cities have lots of educated people, high densities and populations of people, and most cities are left-leaning. We could see this with the election, how the Trump supporters were complaining about votes from the cities. If you go to more rural areas, they're going to be more conservative, and people who live in more rural areas are less educated. There's a trend where education kind of lines up with left-leaning ideas. And, in the cities, it's usually more progressive because there's a wider diversity of different people. And there's also, people are exposed to different cultures. And that really helps. Not if you're isolated and, you only hear about these different types of people, you're going to have certain assumptions and opinions about them, and that could lead you to being a bigoted person. But if you're exposed to these types of people every day, then what it will do is you'll realize they're just normal people and there's no reason to be bigoted because you see these people every day. They're your neighbors, they're your friends, they're your coworkers. It's just you have more access to education in the city, where if you just live on a farm in the middle of Kansas, you're not really going to have that same access to education, and you're probably going to be more conservative leaning.
In order to avoid confronting fascism's actual beliefs. So let me introduce him to you. His name is Giovanni Gentile. Okay. Born in 1875,
I don't know about those.
He was one of the world's most influential philosophers in the first half of the 20th century.
Really?
Gentile believed that there were two diametrically opposed types of democracy. One is liberal democracy, such as that of the United States, which Gentile dismisses as individualistic, too centered on liberty and personal rights, and therefore selfish. The other, the one Gentile recommends, is true democracy, in which individuals willingly subordinate themselves to the state.
Wait a
individuals
minute.
willingly
This is true democracy?
subordinate themselves to the state.
This sounds so dumb. You literally just give yourself up to the state? That sounds like shit.
Like his philosophical mentor Karl Marx, Gentile wanted to create a community that resembles the family.
Okay, so bringing up Karl Marx, I think he's trying to associate these two guys, although I don't know how close they were, if they had a relationship, but I don't know.
A community where we are all in this together. It's easy to see the attraction of this idea. Indeed, it remains a...
Okay, let me read this. There's a thing in chat, cited from Wikipedia, I think. Giovanni Gentile was an Italian neo-Hegelian idealist philosopher, educator, and fascist politician. The self-styled philosopher of fascism, he was influential in providing an intellectual foundation for Italian fascism, and ghostwrote part of the doctrine of fascism with Benito Mussolini. Okay, sounds like a piece of shit to me.
The common rhetorical theme of the left. For example, at the 1984 convention of the Democratic Party, the governor of New York, Mario Cuomo, likened America to an extended family, where, through the government, people all take care of each other. Nothing's changed. 30 years later, a slogan of the 2012 Democratic Party convention was, "The government is the only thing we all belong to." They might as well have been quoting Gentile. Now remember, Gentile was a man of the left.
I think it's different to say that, like, we all exist under the same government to we all submit to the government. I don't know. And also, if he's left-leaning, I highly doubt he would be a fascist if he's left-leaning, but I don't know. We're just gonna watch. Yeah, exactly. Like I don't know how to explain it. How is saying government is meant to protect, like, in a family, like the government is like our family, to saying that, like, we are fascists? It's not exactly the same. It's a bit different. I don't know.
He was really a committed socialist. For Gentile, fascism is a form of socialism. Indeed,
Wait a minute. Socialism, to my understanding, is when workers own the means of production. Fascism, to my understanding, is an authoritarian, hyper-nationalistic rule of power that is very against minorities and whatnot. These are two very, very, very different concepts. I do not see how this makes sense. Also, on Wikipedia, it explicitly says it's a far-right ideology. Far-right people are hyper-nationalistic. That's a fact. The left isn't hyper-nationalistic. If you're a far leftist, you want completely open borders. That is the exact opposite of nationalism, and that is what fascism is about. It's weird how he's kind of like skirting around this.
Workable form. While the socialism of Marx mobilizes people on the basis of class, fascism mobilizes people by appealing to their national identity as well as their class. Fascists...
No, I think fascists just don't like minorities. I think it's that simple. It's not that deep. They just don't like minorities. If you have white fascists, they're not gonna like non-white people. These are what we call fascists. The people that are like racist and xenophobic and super bigoted. This is how we describe fascists. This has nothing to do with the left. The left is the opposite of this.
Are socialists with a national identity. German fascists in the 1930s were called...
No, they are not social. Oh, okay. Now we're bringing up Hitler and the National Socialist Party. This wasn't socialism. This wasn't like a workers owning the means of production sort of group. It was only socialist in name, in the idea that, like, society is grouping up. There's a group. This is a group in society. That's really all it is. Yeah, no, this isn't what we would call socialism. Same thing with communist China, communist Russia. Russia wasn't a stateless, classless, moneyless society, and neither is China. This is not communism, and this is not socialism. These people don't know what definitions are.
Nazis, basically a contraction of the term national.
Yes, you can technically have fascist socialism where minorities' rights are completely disregarded and they're abused within society while workers own the means of production, but that wasn't what was going on here, like, ever.
National socialist. For Gentile, all private action should be oriented to serve society. There's no distinction between the private interest and the public interest. Correctly understood, the two are identical. And who is the administrative arm of society? It's none other than the state. Consequently, to submit to society,
communists want to abolish the state. And by state, that means the borders. That's it. This is a clear contradiction of ideologies. It's such a weird, weaselly way to, like, mix all this stuff up and confuse people.
Is to submit to the state, not just in economic matters, but in all matters. Since everything is political, the state gets to...
I mean, I swear, if this person knows anything about leftists, he would see that there's a group of them that want to abolish the state. If he is aware of that, then he is being disingenuous and dishonest. It's either he's aware of that or he's not aware of that. Either way, he still comes off as stupid.
To tell everyone how to think and what to do. It was another Italian, Benito Mussolini, the fascist dictator of Italy from 1922.
With socialism, it's not about telling people what to think or do. It's kind of like letting people decide what they want to do. Especially democratic socialism. You get all of the workers to make collective decisions about how the business should be run. Kind of what that's about.
To 1943, who turned Gentile's words into action. In his Dottrina del Fascismo, one of the doctrinal statements of early fascism, Mussolini wrote, "All is in the state, and nothing human exists or has value outside the state."
Yeah, that sounds pretty fascist to me.
He was merely paraphrasing Gentile. The Italian philosopher is now lost in obscurity, but his philosophy could not be more relevant because it closely parallels that of the modern left. Gentile's work speaks directly to progressives who champion the centralized state. Here in America, the left has vastly expanded state control over the private sector, from healthcare to banking, from education to energy. This state-directed capitalism is precisely what German and Italian fascists implemented in the 1930s.
Leftists want the government to make sure that people get healthcare and don't die. This is fascist. Okay, dude. Okay.
Leftists can't acknowledge their man Gentile because that would undermine their attempt to bind conservatism to fascism. Conservatism wants small government so that individual liberty can flourish. The left, like Gentile, wants the opposite, to place the resources of the individual and industry in the service of a centralized state. To acknowledge Gentile is to acknowledge that fascism bears a deep kinship.
I learned a little bit about Karl Marx and the Communist Manifesto, and he writes about sort of like a transitionary period before enabling socialism, where he basically wanted to have more things owned by the state and then sort of have the people take over the state. I don't know. I'm not going to explain it. I can't explain it properly, but I highly recommend Anarchist Anna. I think that's how you pronounce her name. She has a great video about that, and that's where I kind of learned about this idea where there's like a transitionary period where Marx wants to use the state and then reappropriate it to be for the people. It's really interesting.
Kinship to the ideology of today's left, so they will keep Gentile where they've got him, dead, buried, and forgotten.
Leftists didn't hide Giovanni. It's just isn't taught in school for some reason. Google pulls it up pretty quick when you type in philosopher of fascism. That's pretty interesting.
But we should remember, or the ghost of
zoomed
fascism
in.
will continue to haunt us. I'm Dinesh D'Souza for Prager University.
Okay, I don't give a shit. All right, that was that segment.